we need to tell our stories to ourselves. When we let someone else tell our stories, we're often made into the villain when we're the victim. We might end up in a supporting character role when who we are is the main character of our lives. If I had listened to the characters in this story, I would think that this was all my fault, that I was making too big a deal of it, that I was reading too much into it, that I brought this on myself, that I was writhing in pain and he was only trying to help me, that they did the best they could, they didn't mean to make it worse, that I'm so unreasonable, nothing they could do would ever satisfy me, that my life wasn't worth living, that I should just give up, that if they had to live my life, they just wouldn't. But when I tell my story to myself, I know I'm not playing the victim. I was victimized. And it's clear to see what characters from my life are actually the villains of this story. Now, I want to be very clear. This is a true story. This is a story that spans decades. And this is a story that I'm choosing to tell publicly, but it's something that I've told myself privately. Void Day, like the moment, happened on December 4th, 2015. When we look at the bigger timeline, my first NDE, when I had my colon removed, was on January 5th, 2005. Then if we zoom out even further and we go back to April 23rd, 1984, the day I was born. When we zoom forward to today, it's January 15th, 2025. This story takes place over the course of 40 years. This is my life. This is a true story. And this is a story I tell myself privately and that I'm willing to share publicly. I want you to hear the messages inside of what I'm sharing. I want you to feel what it was like to be me. That's the experience I have when I read your photos. I get to feel what it's like to be you. I wanted you to know what I've been through, the pain that has expanded my capacity, the challenges I've experienced, and how alone I was inside of all of it. It helps me to tell this story as a story, to be silly and funny, and to find humor inside of something that was so hard. When I'm referring to the characters inside of this story, these are real people. Some of them are living, breathing, hearts beating people that were there, that are now no longer a part of my life. People that have hurt me, betrayed me, devastated me, that are walking the planet, living their lives, knowing that I exist, that I'm still here. They know what they did, and they know what they didn't do, how they could have helped me, and why they chose not to. I have been sharing my life and my story on TikTok. As I'm filming this, TikTok's fate is unknown. It's scary for me. I have been devastated, taken down to the studs, like absolutely nothing left so many times, and I've had to rebuild myself, and I'm exhausted. I don't want to rebuild again. I want to be able to keep this community that I've built by using my voice, by telling my story, and by being vulnerable. Throughout every video I've shared, my sense of humor was there, sometimes in subtle ways and sometimes full on, where I made myself belly laugh in the midst of telling something so painful. I would find a giggle in it. When I thought of telling this huge story, this void story that spanned so much of my life, I knew I would have to talk about specific people and their connection to me, their relationship to me, their role in my life. I often get comments, why do you cover their faces? Why do you keep them anonymous? Show them, shame them, tell us who they are. It has been an intentional choice to protect their anonymity, even though they didn't protect my humanity. It might seem like I'm choosing to protect them, but that's not what this is. The individual people, the players, the supporting cast of my life, they're not special. It could have been anybody. Strangers in this story that I don't know their names and I couldn't pick them out in a lineup showed me more love and compassion and empathy and support than the people who were in my family, my friends, who told me they loved me. They are the villains of the void. They are the ones that made my life harder. They are the people who put my body through torture. They saw me doing everything I could to build myself back up, and they knocked me down. In my story, of course, they have full names, they have faces, each of them smell a particular way to me. Their faces fill my memories. And yet, in the telling of this story, it's not about them. It could be anyone. It could be someone from your life. The circumstances might be different, but how I feel about it might feel the same way you feel about a betrayal in your life. By keeping these people nameless and faceless, as you hear my story, you hear your story. As I heal, we all heal. Some people expect me to tell the story from the perspective of wanting to punish these villains, wanting to shame them, make them wrong. They're just wrong. They are shameful. I don't need to participate in that. I tell the story from my perspective because it's my life, my feelings, my sensations. I had to suffer the consequences of their actions. I was there every second of the wound care changes, and every second of the recovery and learning to walk again, learning how to digest food again. I was there. It's my story. The villains made it harder. They tried to make it about them, but this is my life. It's about me. It's my story, and it's not over yet. Think of this episode as a guide to the characters of the void. Stories I've shared on TikTok where I have jokingly given people nicknames, referred to somebody as something just in the moment as I'm telling the story. Those things have stuck with me. Those nicknames have made me laugh. It's lightened the mood for me. It's buoyed me up in something that just drags me down. There's some people that you know their names. The first villains of the void, my mother and father. My mother's name was Rose, and my father's name was Lee. A lot of people don't connect the dots. That's how they got Rosalee. The combination of their bodies is what they wrote. So of course, my name could only be one thing. A combination of them. When people ask me if I want to change my name, if I've ever thought about it, of course I've thought about it. Ultimately, I really don't want the paperwork. It sounds like a logistical nightmare. I don't like doing just the bare minimum paperwork I have to do. I want to focus on the creative and the energetic. But even deeper than that, I have taken the name Rosalee, and I have made it my own. I am not my parents. No matter how many TikTok comments I get saying that I am doing the same thing that my mother did because I'm recording myself and sharing myself online, that I'm obsessed with my mother when she was the one who was obsessed with me. People have tried all kinds of ways to silence me. I'm still here. I'm still speaking about this. People call them monsters, but it's just some lady and some guy. They're not evil masterminds. My mother was not a genius. She was a regular person who was incredibly jealous and angry and resentful. She had a baby to quench her lifelong guilt, to satisfy her every desire, to gain attention from men. It was intentional. From the second she got pregnant, she knew she could use the baby. It didn't matter who it was, what gender it was. She would have found a way to monetize and exploit the child. That is clear to me because of my lived experience. I knew her. I have now done a case study on her words, on her perspective, on her point of view. The way she saw me, the way she saw herself, the way she saw my father. She is the source of the pain of this story. My father is more complicated, but he is not off the hook. I'm not speaking about him as publicly as I speak about my mother, and that is just because that's where I'm at in this story. I talk about him privately amongst my most trusted core people, the actual supporting cast of my life. For so long, I was all alone. I put out the call for connection, like a dolphin sonar for support. There have been people that have answered my call, who have connected with me, who have shown me what it's like to be loved and cared for, seen and heard and understood. People that ask me questions about how I feel and what I want and what they can do to support me. When they hear my sharing about the things that have happened in my life, they don't grow cold. They don't turn away from me. They soften, they come closer to me, and they're devastated by what has happened to me. Yes, of course. And they're devastated that they weren't there when it happened, because they would have moved heaven and earth to do whatever I needed. I know that kind of love now, but when I was in the moment in these stories, I didn't know it at all. Everything good came with so much bad that it didn't make the good worth anything at all. When we go to the beginning of the story, April 23rd, 1984, we have Rose and Lee. Then we go forward a little bit more. We move into the house that has the diner. Other villains of this story are the men that lived upstairs. The constant fear and stress, knowing they could enter my living quarters, the living room, which was my bedroom. They had full access to me 24/7. I was constantly on guard. I felt like a caged animal that was sharing a cage with their predator. I couldn't get out, and they were already inside. It is my belief that the adverse childhood experiences, the torture I experienced, is the direct source of the autoimmune diseases I have barely survived. If I would have felt safe and loved and cared for, not looking over my shoulder, protecting myself 24/7, just imagine the wear and tear on my little body. Imagine what it feels like to feel scared. How it feels like your ass is gonna drop out of your body. Your stomach flips. You feel like you're gonna throw up. You're sweaty. You have chills. And you're terrified. Most of us experience that in acute moments where something startles us or scares us, where we're fearful for our lives. All of that energy is there to help us survive that moment. To go into fight or fawn or freeze. It's our body's natural reaction, our nervous system's reaction to a threat. It's not supposed to continue constant for years, but it did for me. It's the truth of my story. And then we have the bad men of the void. The men that lived upstairs are a part of this. My father is a part of this. But there are three main characters in the story that I know their contributions to my NDEs. Three people have told me with their words. The three bad men fantasized about ways that they could end my life. One of them told me in detail how he would get away with it. One thing about being raised in that environment, chaos and danger, felt familiar. It felt like family. I found myself choosing men who were scary, who were dangerous, who were obsessed with me. I have done a lot of work on this and thought about this a lot. My belief was that I could be scared of one person who was so obsessed with me and protective of me. He would protect me from my mother, from the world, but no one would protect me from him. It's a deal that I made as a child in accepting the adult man that moved into the house. When I was 16, he moved in and my parents moved out when I was 17 and left me with him. There was a period of time where he lived in the house with my parents. My mother and this man did not get along. They did not see eye to eye because they were in competition with each other. My mother accepted him because she saw how he was torturing me, and she liked it. She liked to see me upset, and he was upsetting me, so she accepted him. And then we have the milkman. This is not the nickname I would have given him or expected to give him at all. Because I shared the story of white milk on TikTok, I have jokingly referred to him as the milkman. In the diner, we would have options for milk, which would be chocolate milk or white milk. From the beginning, I was taking orders at a very young age. That's one of the ways I learned how to write, was by taking orders on the diner pads. When I casually said the phrase white milk, He lost his mind, thought that was so unbelievable. Nobody says that. That's not a thing. Da, 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 da. It came up as I was reading Joe Journal and my mother referred to white milk. It sent me on a whole trajectory doing research and development on a global scale. So many of you contributed your research, where you are in the world, and if white milk is said or not. It became very clear I'm right. The milkman is after the adult man. The milkman was not at all during the Hat Man. And then when the Hat Man occurred, I called the milkman to protect me. He came through. There are parts of them or moments with them that were wonderful, that hooked me in some way. They love bombed me. They told me they could protect me. That it was us against the world. It was the gamble I took to have protection, and it ultimately almost cost me my life. The Hat Man makes me laugh as a nickname. The person, not funny at all. The situation, not at all. People will refer to the Hat Man coming to visit. The fact that this person wore a horrible fedora. The first time I laid eyes on this person, he had on the worst fedora I have ever seen. So, technically, wore a hat, but also push my pain buttons. I was visited by the Hat Man. The Hat Man felt like an appropriate nickname for him. Throughout the story, I had roommates, best friends from childhood. There was one of me and two of them. They have the same first name. When I've talked about them, I've jokingly said, it's like Gladys Knight and the Pips. It's Rosalee and the Blanks, because I have not said their names. Well, name. But it was like the Three Musketeers. They were in my house. They were with my parents. We lived together. They were my best friend, and they are nowhere to be found. They're not supporting me telling my story. They are not supportive in my healing. One of them, out of all of the villains of the story, hurt and betrayed me the most, devastated me, ruined my life, and has yet to understand what she did. It's unbelievable, and it's true. I've talked about the betrayal. I sometimes refer to her as the betrayer. I sometimes refer to her as my former friend, my former business partner, the worst friend I've ever had, the worst person I've ever met, and then the other one, which is so weird because growing up, it was the other way. It was the other one was my closest confidant, my soul sibling. It was us against the world from first grade on. My longest standing friend, she was the main one, and my former friend was the other one. But now the former friend is the big betrayal, and the main one is the other one. If you this is confusing, but they have the same name. It's always been confusing. It's always been like this. So the other one, aka the homophobic one, breaks my heart. She chooses to believe words written long ago and mistranslated over her best friend. A living, breathing, heart-beating person that shares all of her memories. The person that she looked at as a support to her children. She is the mother of my godchildren. I love those babies, and I love her. And I'm heartbroken that she became a villain in my story. I expected so much more from her. I expected so much more from all of these people. I deserve so much more from all of them. And then there's a miscellaneous cast of characters that I would just refer to as my former friends. People that were there in my hospital room, that did nothing, that had no urgency. I asked directly for their support. I asked them to do certain things for me because I could not do them for myself. They didn't do them. They couldn't. It's too hard. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. I don't like to speak in public. I don't want to ask the nurse for anything. We shouldn't call the police. He didn't mean it. Are you sure you don't want to talk to him and hear his side of the story? Are you sure you want to talk about this publicly? You don't want people to get the wrong impression of you. You don't want them to think that this was all your fault, do you? Maybe you should just keep this to yourself. Hello? Excuse me? What the fuck? Disgust me. Spineless, pathetic, and not deserving of even being named. They know who they are. And if you're watching this and you're questioning, is that me? Are they talking about me? Or more accurately, is she talking about me? If you're misgendering me, if you're wondering if I'm talking about you, I'm talking about you. Ask yourself, did you do everything you could? Did you do anything at all? Did you ask what I needed for support? And when I told you, did you do it? When you asked me what you could do to help me and I gave you specific things, you go, oh, well, I actually didn't. I just thought I could maybe get you some protein shakes or something. Or like send you an Amazon gift card. I actually didn't mean I could do anything. Being chronically ill is hard enough. Experiencing life-altering surgeries is unimaginable to most people. I have so much experience inside of the operating room that I notice everything. I appreciate how coordinated they are, how they are like synchronized swimmers. It's beautiful in the operating room. I have that much experience being the patient being cut open that I can appreciate the choreographed dance of the operating room that shows you the level of my experience. It's not a nerve-wracking situation. It's not something where I'm so scared I can't notice anything. I'm fully aware, having regulated conversations with people. Because it's old hat. I've done it a million times. It's no big deal, and I've done it alone. When they've tried to discharge me from the hospital, and they've said, like, oh, well, who's going to be helping you? And I say, no one. What do you mean, no one? You don't have any family? No, I don't have any family. You don't have a mother? No. You don't have a father? You don't have any cousins? Do you know how, like, medical staff will not accept that I am an orphan who has no family, who has no one to help me? I have had to advocate myself to go to a nursing facility because that's the only way I would receive care. I've had to beg and plead for people to help me. Thankfully, the milkman stepped up and saved my life and did my wound care changes. I wish I could say I am thankful and I love him and I'm so glad. I wish, and I gave him every opportunity to clear it up with me, but he was horrible. He made that situation so much worse than it needed to be. He traumatized me beyond belief. He screamed at me as I lay bleeding. He walked out when he knew I had no one to punish me. And then there's like quote unquote family members, and I would never call them family because I never actually had the experience of family. So when you hear me talk about my cousins, I won't even say cousin, I will say my mother's siblings' children, because that's actually who they are to me. They're not people that I know as cousins. I don't have aunts and uncles. I know people that were my mother's family. I know people that were my father's family, but I don't have family. That was an intentional choice my parents made. It's just the three of us. It's just the three of us. When they're gone, it's just me. My quote-unquote family have harassed me, bullied me. They've been homophobic, transphobic. They've blamed me for what my parents did to me. They've said, I want to believe the best about your mother. She was so great. What are you talking about? These are also the people that when I've called them to talk about my parents and to talk about what happened, the first thing out of their mouth is to say, is this about the sex stuff? They knew. They were adults when I was children and they knew something was up. I don't have siblings, but my father had children before I was born that were adults. These people hated a baby for just being born. They took out their feelings, their frustrations, their jealousy, their resentments on a baby. It never stopped until I stopped the relationship. I intend to keep these people anonymous. I hope that they choose to leave me alone for the rest of my life. They can pay off their debts, but beyond that, there's nothing here for them. A special character that just shows up for one episode, the Giant. The Giant and some of these villains had moments of love, moments of connection to me, moments of support. That's what makes it so complicated and hard. These people aren't monsters. They're not all bad. But when it came to choosing loving me or hating me, being jealous of me, wanting me all to themselves, wanting to knock me off balance, keep me confused so that I would stay with them and not grow. The adult man was a musician, and I was his muse. He wrote so many songs about me. A lot of the songs had the same theme, that I would grow beyond him, that I would fly away, and that he would lose it all. So to keep me, they cut my wings off. They made sure I couldn't leave the ground, so that I couldn't fly away. They didn't know how capable I am. They didn't know how smart. They didn't know how loving, because they didn't let me into their hearts. Their insecurities about themselves. Unresolved resentments and insecurity are the most dangerous things in interpersonal relationships. If these people had liked themselves, none of this would have happened to me. If my mother had liked herself, as simple as that, she would have found one redeeming quality about herself. It's possible this never would have happened. There are layers to the work that I do, to what I share as the Plum Collective, the paths that I've created, the tools, the process to get to know yourself, to connect to yourself. Part of it is for me. I created these things for me, but I also created these things for the villains. I saw them. I felt them from the inside. I know why they treated me the way that they did. I know why they continue to go around hurting other people and hurting themselves. It's probably sick to some people, but this is the kind of love and capacity that I have. I've offered the Plum Collective to these people. I said, here, I made this for you. I made this because I've been thinking about you and what happened, and this is what you need. No matter where you feel you are, if you feel that you are the villain in your story, or if you feel that you're the victim in your story, or if you feel like you're non-existent in your story, the things that I've created are for you. I've studied this. I've untangled this. It has been my sole focus, like SOUL. My soul is focused on this, to dig myself out of the depths. I did so much of it alone. I'm not alone anymore. I'm so thankful for Sarah, my partner in the Plum Collective. We see things and experience things often in an inverse quality. I'm zoomed out like a bird seeing above, and she is zoomed right in like a little mouse, right there. Like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, she's seeing things on the microscope level. She listens to me. She believes in me, and she believes in what we've created. She has witnessed how it has helped me, how it has supported me, how it has made me braver and more myself. And she knows it because she's experienced it for herself. All of the things that we have created and that we offer, intuitive photo readings, plum practice, the diner, and clarity calls, they're 4 paths to you that include support from me, guidance, direction, love, understanding. The things that I did not have, I created so that I could be with myself, because so much of this story I have thought, if only there was a me there, if only there was someone who saw it like I see it, who advocates like I advocate, who's not afraid, who's bold, who's fearless. I feel that I have that with myself now. I am my own best friend. I always was there, but the noise of other people kept me from really connecting with myself. That was intentional on the parts of the villains. They knew how powerful I would be if I knew who I was. So they kept me confused, they kept me off balance, and they clipped my wings. But I grew them back, baby. I regenerated, and I'm back better than ever. But I'm physically weak. I'm made of paper mache. Simple tasks can knock me off balance. Random things can put me below baseline. A simple cold could end it all. So I caregive for myself. I mother myself. I birth myself into my own life. I support myself. I express myself. I listen to myself. I see myself. And I witness myself. So that I can hear and know and believe the story of my life from my point of view. It's available for you too. Thank you for being with me in this story, because this story is my life. Thank you for being a part of my life. Please consider joining the Plum Practice membership, or entering the diner, or getting on my calendar for an intuitive photo reading. In the unknown of TikTok, I'm asking the collective for support. I'm scared. I don't know how I will survive this without you. If my work is meaningful to you, please consider showing up for me. Connecting with yourself, you are contributing to me. You are keeping me alive through your support and your participation in the Plumb Collective. Share these stories with people that you think need to hear them. We have free resources. We have multiple starting points for you to connect to yourself, so that you can see yourself, that you can feel bold and brave and gentle and silly at the same time. If you hear me and you go, how did they do it? I'm showing you how. I literally made a how-to guide and I named it the diner, because the place that almost ruined me, the physical location of the torture, what a powerful twist to have created a safe space. A space that holds the energy of the void, the magic moment. And the only name that it could have been called is the same name from all those years ago. But when you enter the diner, when you experience it for yourself, you'll know why it couldn't have been called anything else. It is magic. And I realize I'm being vague about it, but I want you to have the experience of the diner. I want you to feel what it feels like when it clicks in what it actually is. It's an aha moment that carries the energy of an NDE without you ever risking your life. It's a monumental shift. It opens you to endless perspectives of who you are and who you could be. I have taken every horrible thing that has happened to me, all of the lemons that life and these villains have pelted me with, and I have squeezed the shit out of them. Every last drop. The Plum Collective is my lemonade. It's refreshing. It's sweetness. It's for me, and it's for you. Join me and meet yourself, the real you, your soul self. What would it be like if you were your own best friend? Do you want to know what that feels like? Connect with me and my soul self inside of the Plum Collective.
Tune in next week for a new episode of the Plum Podcast, where you'll hear a new conversation unfold from a new starting point. The conversation will be different, but we will always express ourselves authentically, and we create the space for you to do the same.